If you use alcohol to fall asleep, I have some bad news and some good news for you. The bad news is that alcohol isn't actually helping you to sleep. In fact, alcohol tends to ruin your sleep and rob you of the benefits of a good night's sleep. The good news is that when you understand what's actually happening in your brain when you drink, there are much better ways to get the rest that you're looking for. This is what we're talking about today on How to Drink Less. Why so many people believe they need alcohol to sleep, why alcohol actually makes your sleep worse, and how to retrain your brain to sleep without relying on wine, beer, or whatever your drink of choice happens to be. You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Clout. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or quit drinking for good, this podcast will help you to stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Listen on to find out how. Hi everyone, welcome back for another episode. Today we are talking about alcohol and sleep. One of the most common things I hear from people who are trying to cut back or quit drinking is, but alcohol helps me sleep. I need a couple of drinks to switch my brain off. Sometimes people will tell me that they have tried to take a break from drinking and they struggle to fall asleep and they just lie awake for hours in their beds. If that's you, first of all, you're not alone. So many people have this experience. I kind of had this experience too. In fact, I remember going to the doctors at some point, back when I was still a drinker, and mentioning that I wasn't sleeping very well and I was really feeling restless at night. I was sleeping very lightly, and it felt like all night I was on the brink of consciousness rather than fully asleep. And I remember actually asking my doctor if this could have anything to do with my drinking. I think part of me was actually hoping that he might tell me to quit drinking because I knew already that I was drinking too much. But he said nothing of the sort. Instead, he recommended Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, which, by the way, if you haven't read, it's super interesting and informative, so I highly recommend that you read it. But anyway, I read the book at some point, but I kept drinking since my doctor hadn't told me that I needed to stop. And it's a very common belief, actually, that drinking makes it easier to fall asleep. And on the surface, it makes sense. We kind of see that, don't we? We have a drink, we feel sleepy, we fall asleep. Case closed, right? Alcohol feels like it's solving the problem. It feels like it's working. So let's talk about why that is. When you drink, alcohol suppresses activity in the central nervous system. Your thoughts slow down, your muscles relax, you feel drowsy, the racing thoughts become quieter, and whatever happened that day seems to fall behind. And because of that, many people seem to fall asleep faster after drinking. But what's really happening is alcohol sedates you and it helps you to lose consciousness so you pass out. But being passed out and unconscious is not the same thing as sleeping restfully. Matthew Walker, the same sleep researcher who wrote that book, Why We Sleep, he talks a lot about the distinction between being sedated and being asleep. One of the key points he makes is that alcohol does not create natural sleep. It creates a state that resembles sleep from the outside, but lacks many of the benefits of actual sleep. And that's where the problem begins. One of the biggest things alcohol does is it suppresses REM sleep. On average, you lose 3 or 4 REM cycles per night when you've been drinking. And that's a problem because REM sleep is a sleep stage associated with dreaming, but it's also where a huge amount of emotional processing happens. In REM, your brain sorts through your experiences, it processes memories, regulates emotions, and basically does a lot of overnight housekeeping. REM sleep affects your memory and your ability to learn new things and also your ability to solve problems. So when you lose REM sleep, when you're deprived of REM sleep, these functions worsen too, which means that you wake up feeling less restored, less resilient, less in control of your life, and less able to cope with whatever the next day brings. And this creates a vicious cycle because now you're waking up more stressed and tired. And because you're more stressed, you want to drink the next night too, to deal with that stress. which then creates another poor night's sleep, which makes you more stressed the next day, and so on it goes. The other thing that alcohol does is it produces fragmented sleep. Even if you're unconscious for 8 hours, your sleep is often really shallow and more disrupted if you've been drinking. You wake up many, many times throughout the night, not long enough to actually register that you're awake, but long enough that your sleep is not continuous, and therefore it's not actually restorative. So you will not wake up feeling rested if you've been drinking the night before. And as alcohol leaves your body, you might be flooded with stress hormones like cortisol, which is why so many people wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on a night when they've been drinking. And if you have ever found yourself staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, your heart racing, brain suddenly reviewing every embarrassing thing you've ever done since middle school, odds are alcohol was probably involved. Here's what's happening. As your body metabolizes the alcohol and the alcohol starts dropping, the alcohol levels start dropping, your nervous system rebounds in the opposite direction. So, whereas before, initially when you drank, you were more sedated, now your brain overreacts. So instead of that calm feeling that you were feeling in the beginning, you now become more alert as the alcohol leaves your system, and that's why you wake up, because you're alert and anxious. And then you lie there wondering why you can't get back to sleep. One thing I find fascinating is that many people think alcohol is helping their anxiety, but often alcohol is actually making it worse. Maybe not necessarily in the moment, but certainly overnight and in the next day, alcohol increases anxiety. Poor sleep increases anxiety. Poor sleep increases emotional reactivity. Poor sleep reduces your ability to regulate your emotions and puts you in a worse mood. So the very substance that you're drinking in order to calm down ends up creating more of the thing that you're trying to escape. And I want to pause here and say a few words about why it's so important to invest in your sleep. A good night's sleep improves your attention and concentration, so you produce better work faster. And I don't just mean this in the capitalist sense of being productive so you can earn a paycheck. I mean, whatever it is you spend your time doing, whether it's for a paycheck or for pure pleasure or both, you will be able to focus much better and complete the task faster if you go to bed sober and get a good night's sleep. Good sleep also equals better mood. When you're well rested, you're more in control of your emotions and less prone to irritability and depression and anxiety. Good sleep also supports heart health and it lowers your risk of a heart attack. Sleep is also important for regulating blood sugar, so if you sleep well, you lower your risk of type 2 diabetes. And good sleep also strengthens your immune system, so you're less prone to infections if you're a good sleeper. Sleep also impacts weight. If you're not sleeping well, your hunger hormones are likely dysregulated, which means it's harder to maintain a healthier weight. That's why all the weight loss gurus out there are always talking about the importance of getting a good night's sleep if you're trying to lose weight. Now, if you're listening and thinking, okay, great, Adriana, I hear you, alcohol is ruining my sleep, but how do I fall asleep without it? Let's talk about that. The first thing I want you to understand is that sleep is not something you force. You cannot make yourself sleep. If you've ever spent an hour or 3 lying in bed, desperately trying to sleep, you know exactly what I mean. Sleep is something you allow. Your job is not to knock yourself unconscious. Your job is to create the conditions where sleep can happen naturally. That's a very different goal. The second thing I want you to understand is that what most people think is a sleep problem is often a stress problem or an overwhelm problem or an anxiety problem. They have an overactive nervous system that's making it hard to get into that rest and digest response that is required for sleeping. Let's say you're lying awake because you're worried about money. Alcohol doesn't solve the money problem. It just temporarily distracts you from it and numbs that worry so you can pass out. Or maybe you're overwhelmed because you have lots of things on your to-do list. Maybe you've been rushing around all day and your nervous system is still operating at full speed. Again, Alcohol doesn't teach your nervous system how to downregulate. It doesn't help you to get into a state of relaxation that feels restorative. Alcohol just sedates you. So instead of asking, how do I make myself sleep? Start asking, what does my body need right now in order to feel safe enough to rest? That's a much more helpful question. One of the simplest things you can do if you're trying to fall asleep, trying to calm yourself down enough to fall asleep, is breathing. I know, I can hear some of you rolling your eyes at this, but hear me out. A deep breath with a long exhalation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest response. So try inhaling for the count of 4 and exhaling for the count of 6 or even to the count of 8. And do this a few times and notice how much calmer you feel. You're not doing this breathing exercise with the goal of falling asleep. You're simply trying to communicate safety to your body because feeling safe is a prerequisite for your body to relax enough for sleep to happen. Another way to help yourself get ready for sleep is to get out of your head and into the body. Many people who struggle to sleep are trapped in their thoughts, but it's hard to think yourself calm or to think yourself asleep. I know because I've tried. Instead, I want you to shift your attention to your body. Notice your breathing. Notice where you feel your breath moving in and out. Notice the points where your body touches the mattress underneath you. Notice what your pillow feels like, how soft it is, how hard it is. Notice the weight of the blanket on top of you. Notice the temperature of the room. Notice any sounds and smells around you. Notice any physical sensations, any tingling, any other sensations in the body. The more you anchor yourself into your body, the less energy is available for spinning stories in your head. And the more you're in your body, using your senses to experience your immediate surroundings, the more you're in the present moment, which means the more you can release stress about what happened in the past or anxiety about what might happen in the future. You can use calming music to help you relax, or do a body scan meditation that helps you to connect with different parts of your body, but you don't even have to do anything as fancy as that. Like I said, a few deep breaths with the exhale longer than the inhale will help you to calm down. You can also work on creating a healthier bedtime ritual. Often, alcohol becomes part of the bedtime routine, and over time, as you repeat that routine, your brain learns to associate wine with sleep. The good news is that these associations can be changed. Maybe your new ritual includes a cup of herbal tea, a hot shower, a few minutes of gentle stretching, dimming the lights, etc. The specific ritual matters way less than the consistency with which you do it, because the point here is that you're teaching your brain a new cue. You're creating new associations between certain activities or certain things you consume and sleep. You're showing your brain that sleep is available without alcohol. And if you find yourself lying awake for a stretch of time, stop fighting with insomnia. This is a huge one. The more desperately you try to sleep, the harder it becomes. Don't lie there trying to discipline yourself into sleeping and telling yourself, oh my God, I need to fall asleep right away, or I'll be really tired tomorrow. I really need to fall asleep right now. Instead, try reminding yourself that your job is simply to rest, and sleep can come when it wants to. And notice how much softer that feels and how much less pressure you're putting on yourself. Because we all know that pressuring yourself asleep doesn't work. Now, I want to normalize something. If you've been relying on alcohol for sleep for a long time and you suddenly stop drinking, your sleep might temporarily get worse before it gets better. You might indeed find yourself lying awake for longer. You might have more vivid dreams, or you might wake up more often. Nothing has gone wrong if that happens. Your brain is just recalibrating, and your body is relearning how to sleep naturally. And while everyone's timeline is different, most people find that their sleep improves dramatically once they get through that adjustment period. In fact, one of the most common things I hear from clients who have any time of sobriety under their belts is, I didn't realize how tired I was until I quit drinking and started sleeping properly. And everyone is so grateful to have their sleep restored. So let me leave you with this. If you've been using alcohol to knock yourself out and pass out, I want you to consider the possibility that alcohol is not helping you sleep. It is sedating you, but at the same time, it's robbing you of the deep restorative sleep that your mind and your body are actually craving. Real rest doesn't come from numbing yourself. It comes when your body feels safe to let go. You already know how to sleep. You just need to stop outsourcing that process to alcohol. It might take a bit of practice, and you might have to practice better sleep hygiene, such as putting away screens a couple hours before bed, reducing caffeine during the day, and so on. But the time you invest in learning how to fall asleep without alcohol is time well spent in the long term. Your body and all of your organs will be grateful if you do that, but so will your mind, because restful sleep is so important for creativity, for problem solving, for emotional resilience, all of the things that you want more of. Even if there is a period of adjustment as your nervous system learns how to relax, it's well worth it, trust me. And improved sleep is just one of the many benefits of sobriety. If you're ready to explore what sobriety can look like for you, I would love to work with you. Book a free consultation through the link in the show notes, and let's talk about what's keeping you stuck and how we can help you build a life that you don't need to drink to escape from. Take good care, my friends. Sleep well, and I'll talk to you next week.